Do you water your vegetables every day, thinking that's the best way? What if I told you you might actually be harming them? Today, we're going to bust a major myth about watering. You'll learn how often to water 5 different groups of vegetables. Everything from a daily soak to just once a week. And trust me, you'll be surprised. Many new gardeners think that more water is always better. It makes sense, right? Water is life after all. But the truth is, proper watering is actually a science. Too much water and the roots drown. Too little and your plants wilt away. So how do you find that perfect balance? Well, here's the secret. Not all vegetables are created equal. So let's get right to it. Who are the real water hogs in your garden? That would be your cucumbers and cabbage. These plants are absolute champions when it comes to drinking water. Why? Well, a cucumber is nearly 95% water. To get that juicy flesh, they need a steady supply of moisture. Cabbage, with its huge leaves, also loses a lot of water through evaporation. And to form a nice dense head, it needs a continuous supply of water. So how do you keep them happy? Cucumbers and cabbage thrive when the soil around them is consistently moist, but never waterlogged. Think of it like a well-wrung sponge. Damp, but not dripping. On a hot, sunny day, this might mean watering almost every single day. Yes, you heard that right. Especially if your plants are growing in lighter soil that drains quickly. For cucumbers, it's crucial that the top layer of soil doesn't dry out, because their root system is quite shallow. If they don't get enough moisture, their fruits can become bitter. It's a similar story with cabbage, especially when the heads are forming. A lack of water can result in loose heads or sometimes no heads at all. The best time to water these crops is early in the morning. This way, the water soaks in before the heat of the day and the leaves have time to dry. This significantly reduces the risk of fungal diseases. Always water directly at the base of the plant, trying not to wet the leaves, especially on cucumbers. Remember, these plants love water, but it's all about balance. Overwatering is just as dangerous as underwatering. It can lead to root rot. So, for cucumbers and cabbage, the key is frequent and sufficient watering. That's the only way you'll get strong, healthy plants and a bountiful harvest. Now let's talk about tomatoes and peppers. When it comes to watering these plants, moderation is key. There's no rush. Yes, they need water, but don't overdo it. These crops absolutely hate soggy soil around their roots. Their roots grow deep, so they don't need watering every single day. In fact, watering less often, but giving them a really good soak, actually encourages their roots to stretch deeper. This makes the plant stronger. So, how do you know when it's time to water? Just stick your finger about 2 or 3 centimeters deep into the soil. If it feels dry at that depth, it's time. Water generously right at the base of the plant, making sure the water soaks down to those deep roots. Typically, you'll do this every 2 to 3 days during hot weather, or every 4 to 5 days when it's cooler. Try to avoid sudden big changes in moisture levels, especially for tomatoes. Watering heavily after the soil has been very dry can cause the fruits to crack. Uneven watering is also a common cause of blossom end rot, those dark spots you see on the bottom of a tomato. This happens because the plant has trouble taking up calcium consistently. Peppers don't like constantly wet feet either. Too much water can lead to root rot. Water your pepper plants just like your tomatoes, at the base, thoroughly, and always in the morning. This gives the water time to absorb properly and allows the leaves to dry off throughout the day. Think of it like this. You want your tomato bush to be able to drink deeply, but you definitely don't want it standing in a puddle. Finding that balance is the key to a healthy and abundant harvest of both peppers and tomatoes. Now what about root vegetables? Carrots, beets and potatoes are a different story. These plants prefer to wait for a good drink. They don't like frequent shallow watering at all. What they really need is infrequent, but deep and thorough watering to encourage their roots to grow down, not out along the surface. Why is this? Imagine a long carrot or beetroot. If you water lightly every day, the moisture only goes down a few inches. Consequently, the roots have no reason to grow deep. They spread out horizontally just below the surface to find water. They don't push downwards in search of moisture. This results in small, stunted, or even misshapen root vegetables that are more susceptible to drying out in hot weather. So, when watering carrots, beets, or potatoes, water deeply and thoroughly, and aim to soak the soil to a depth of at least 8 to 12 inches, 20 to 30 hinyan. This encourages the roots to grow downwards, deep into the earth. The payoff? Large, uniform, and juicy root vegetables that are better equipped to handle dry spells and will store much longer. How often should you do this? Typically, once a week is enough, or even less frequently during cool spells or after rain. But remember, when you water, make it count. The best time is still the morning, allowing the soil to absorb the water properly. Avoid watering in the heat of the day, as most of the water will simply evaporate. Just remember how deep those roots want to go, and it makes sense why a deep watering is crucial. This deep watering technique is key to growing impressive, healthy root vegetables. Next up, peas and beans. These legumes appreciate stability and consistency. They don't like extremes, neither drying out completely nor being waterlogged. Peas and beans need consistent but moderate moisture. Picture nice, tidy rows that aren't flooded, but also aren't bone dry. They thrive when the soil stays slightly moist. Providing enough water is especially crucial during the flowering stage and when pods are forming. A lack of moisture at this time can cause flowers to drop or result in empty pods. How often should you water? Typically, it's every 3 to 4 days depending on the weather. In hot conditions, you might need to water more frequently. On cooler or rainy days, you can reduce watering. The key is regularity. Aim to keep the soil consistently moist, avoiding complete drying out between waterings, but definitely don't turn the ground into a swamp. Always water peas and beans at the base of the plant. Try not to get the leaves wet, as this can help prevent fungal diseases. And, as is often recommended, early morning is the perfect time to water. This gives the plants plenty of time to absorb the water before the heat of the day sets in. Correct watering practices will help your peas and beans grow strong and healthy, and of course, reward you with a delicious and abundant harvest of tasty pods. And finally, let's talk about the real lightweights when it comes to watering. Onions and garlic. You'd be surprised how little water they actually need. It's incredibly easy to overwater them. These crops are pretty low maintenance in terms of irrigation, particularly as they mature. In their early stages, when onions and garlic are establishing roots and growing their green tops, they do need some moisture, of course. Moderate watering is appropriate during this phase. But once the bulbs or cloves start actively developing and swelling, their water requirements drop significantly. In fact, overwatering onions and garlic is quite risky. It can easily lead to rotting bulbs and encourage fungal diseases. Think about what happens when you overwater a houseplant. It's similar for onions. They'll just start to rot. Plus, too much moisture compromises how well your harvest will store. Bulbs grown in excessively wet conditions won't keep as well over winter. So, how often should you water? During the initial growth phase, if there's no rain, watering once every 5 to 7 days is usually sufficient. However, once the bulbs start forming, typically about a month before harvest, you should stop watering entirely. Crucially, the soil needs to be allowed to dry out completely between waterings in the early phase. This helps toughen up the plants and encourages the development of firm bulbs that store well. So when it comes to growing onions and garlic, remember, less water is often much better. Now for the most interesting part. You might always have thought that droopy leaves mean your plant needs water, and most of the time you'd be right. But here's a shocking fact. Wilting can also be a sign of overwatering. Yes, you heard that right. When roots get too much water, they actually suffocate from lack of oxygen. The plant can't absorb water properly, even if it's sitting in it. This causes the leaves to lose their firmness and look exactly like they're dying of thirst. But in reality, they're drowning. This is one of the most frequent causes of death for seedlings and young plants. That's why it's so important to know the specific needs of each vegetable, instead of just watering on a strict schedule or guessing by eye. So we've learned that not all vegetables drink the same way. Cucumbers and cabbage need consistent moisture, while tomatoes and peppers prefer a more moderate approach. Root vegetables like infrequent but deep watering. Peas and beans thrive with stable moisture levels, and onions and garlic barely need watering at all. Remember, wilting doesn't always mean your plant is thirsty. Sometimes it's a cry for help from a plant that's drowning. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. If you now feel like a more confident gardener, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new tips, and leave a comment. Which plant do you find most challenging to water correctly? Share your experience in the comments below.